Welcome to Successfully Ambiguous, the podcast that asks, when opportunity knocks, will you be ready to answer? I'm Christine Brooks Cappadocia, and today we're going to meet Diana Palmerín Velasco, Senior Director of the Future of Work for the Canadian Chamber of Commerce and newcomer to Canada. So let's open the door and meet Diana. Welcome, Diana. It's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. You and I have met through the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, where you host a very informative and really just refreshing conversation across sectors and across the country on the future of work. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Christine. Such a pleasure to be joining you in this initiative. I love it. Thank you so much.
You have a background that is really, truly tailor-made for the Successfully Ambiguous podcast. You have been employed in multiple countries, and now with your future of work focus. I'd love to dig into something you said to the, I believe you were testifying at Senate on immigration. And one of the things that's keeping me up at night is that populations are declining around the world except for sub-Saharan Africa. And we have been in a process over the last year of really curbing our intake of temporary foreign workers in this country, including in temporary immigration, particularly international students. How do you think that will impact our country?
I think, yeah, that's a huge conversation. It is already impacting. I hear every week from employers across the country and the challenges they are experiencing finding people. I think, here in Canada, of course, Canada is a country of immigrants. I am an immigrant myself, came to Canada in 2011. But, Canada has prioritized highly skilled immigrants. And the reality is that the country also has lots of, quote unquote, low skilled labor needs. So one way that employers have been able to fill those roles has been through a temporary foreign worker program that in the past year became completely demonized in the media. I mean, by no means a program is perfect, but the vast majority of Canadian employers are responsible and they look after these workers that actually, many of them come to Canada year after year. I'm thinking about workers in the agricultural sector. That is a sector that really depends on temporary foreign labor. And then, of course, we had this explosion on temporary residents. A big part of that, of course, international students. Lots of people with temporary work permits. Not all of them came through a temporary foreign worker program. Actually, there's another program that receives not so much attention, but is the International Mobility Program. And then you have, of course, people that came through a temporary foreign worker program. So I am concerned. I mean, we all know that we have an aging population like many other developed countries. We have a really low fertility rate. And we know that immigration is a key driver for economic growth. I understand the government wanting to make sure that the country has the capacity to successfully absorb and integrate newcomers. But, perhaps there's a saturation in big cities, but that doesn't mean it is the case for small communities across the country. Just to give you an example, 2 weeks ago, I connected with my colleagues from the Yellowknife Chamber of Commerce, and they were talking to me about, how the North has been elevated and how there's this big vision for the North, but none of that will happen without the people. So, and immigration is a big part of that.
There is a better way to build capacity than demonizing newcomers. Newcomers are part of our society. I live in farm country myself, and it's the same workers that come back year over year. We get to know them on the cycle path. We run into each other, right? These people are part of our community. They just live here. They're part-time.
Yeah, and I think particularly going back to the seasonal agricultural worker program, I think often we forget that this is a program that has been in place for 5 decades. And actually, in this program, the government of Canada has agreements with countries like Jamaica and my home country of Mexico. I have been on planes from Toronto to Mexico City full of Mexican temporary foreign workers. And again, it's not a perfect program, but I think that overall it works. It works for Canada and it works for thousands of workers that, come year after year.
You've lived in London, you've lived and worked in Mexico and Canada. Are there differences between the UK and Canada in terms of how we welcome newcomers and opportunity?
I, like talking about my personal experience, and I feel very lucky and fortunate that I have been able to experience different countries and different cultures. But being an immigrant, I found it hard in the UK. I found it hard in Canada as well. Getting that first job is incredibly challenging. I actually had studied my master's degree in the UK, but still finding my first job there was very challenging. And then when we came to Canada, I perhaps a little bit naive, but I thought, I have my master's from the UK. I already speak the language. It should be easy, and it wasn't. And this was back in 2011. So it actually took me 2 years to find my first job in Canada. You were asking, if it's different. I actually find I would have thought that it wouldn't be so different. But actually, the workplace culture, I think in the UK and in Canada is very different. In the UK, it's a different sense of humor. I don't know. Like it took me a while to kind of like fully adapt and understand those differences. So yes, I think it is different.
And you were coming here as a postdoc, right? So you had quite a lot of experience in the world of work, in the world of policy development already. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Like I feel like when I look at my resume, I always say I have kind of like this eclectic experience. I have been everywhere, and sometimes I have to be very intentional in how. I mean, that's not how I planned it. It's just where life takes you. And but yeah, like I at some point, and I did my PhD in Mexico, and at some point I was really like thinking, I want to get into academia, and then it didn't happen. Now I'm happy that it didn't happen. Um, but yeah, like sometimes, and I think particularly when you're an immigrant, you come to a new country, you have to be really creative, and like I would say kind of like being willing to try different things. But yeah, like I think for newcomers, something that is crucial is, that lack of kind of like, I would say social capital. Yeah, it is a big barrier and it is a shame because I think, as I said, it took me 2 years to find my first job. Those were 2 years where I lost, but I think Canada lost as well.
oh,
So if there's
100%.
something that we can do to accelerate that, like we receive thousands of people that have all the energy, all the qualifications, and we actually choose them because of the skills that they
Mhm.
have. And once they land here, it is truly a shame that we're still, we haven't been able to address that. And as I said, I came 2011, now we're in 2025, and I keep hearing that the same issues are happening.
It's funny, I serve on a number of committees that try to address some of these challenges, but we as educators are disconnected from the settlement agencies, and the employment agencies are all kind of disconnected in Canada. And even when we come together, we're not always describing the same situation, or in many ways, we are describing the same situation, but from different angles. We've got a new government and and we're talking about rethinking many of the long-standing things of the way the Canadian economy works. What would be, based on your experience as a DEI consultant, an expert in the future of work, and as a newcomer, highly skilled newcomer, what would your hope for Canada? What could we do to address this? Do you have any ideas of how we might solve this? Because we are losing out as a country.
We're definitely losing out. I think for sure you have seen these, I would say, very concerning you know, surveys of actually how many people that chose, Canada, they were chosen by Canada. After 5 years, they decided to go back just because they didn't find what they were expecting to find here. So, yeah, that is terrible. And I mean, there are no easy solutions. I would say, from my experience, and it is interesting. I now work at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, but before that, I spent a long time working with immigrant serving organizations and settlement organizations. And I agree with what you say. I think there is a disconnect. There is a lack of common understanding. For me, I mean, the way I say it, I think Canada is a fabulous country. I see all the pieces of the puzzle there. It's just when we come together, and of course, that includes, universities and colleges, employers, the settlement organizations, really working together. Now, of course, the other part of the issue is, what is kind of like federal government jurisdiction, what it is provincial. But I think if um, if a will truly to collaborate existed, I think many of these issues, I wouldn't say would be totally solved, but I think we would see better results. And I think at least, from the settlement sector, often they have kind of like their own language, and often employers just do not have the time to sit in, 2 hours meetings that go nowhere. The settlement sector also gets frustrated with employers and sometimes think they don't really want to hire or they are discriminating. Then universities and colleges are trying also to engage and align, but they have research projects and they're looking for employers to be part of focus groups. And employers, you know, the vast majority of employers in Canada, more than 90%, are small and medium-sized businesses. They don't have the time to spend, 3 days in a focus group and giving interviews and all of that. So I think, we need to understand where each of the parts and the actors are coming from. We really need to, and I think there's improvement in that, but really incorporate those voices from newcomers who are experiencing or that went through some of the challenges. I think many of them would have fantastic solutions. And we also need to understand that there's huge diversity within the newcomer slash immigrant population. Often, people think we're all the same. Even when we talk about refugees, for example, we do a terrible job of recognizing the amazing skills that they bring. So I think it starts with understanding that pretty much every person has a unique path and how we adapt to that. In my case, just to give you an example, when I came, there were the settlement organizations. Very often they offer employment services, and I went just to see, what is that they could help me with. And they didn't know what to do with someone like me. Like they said, well, next week we have a job fair. But like there was really nothing for me there. They
They
were
did.
offering to teach me how to write a resume. I already knew how to write a resume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could be teaching that on the first day. That's part of the challenge, right? Is we have this imagination of what a newcomer is, and it's rooted in the early 19th century in many ways, right? We need to evolve that and have these conversations that embrace the diversity. I think if our country can get it right, or any liberal democracy that can get the welcoming of newcomers right, they will be the dominant country in the coming century. This is where we need to be. The other thing that's really changing the world, the Canadian economy, is the adoption of AI. And I know you hear about labor shortages every day. What do you think Canada has to do to really revitalize our economy and take advantage of the changing situation?
That's a complex one.
Good
And
question.
you bring AI. I just like last week, I read an article saying that now lots of companies are AI to interview candidates. And
Oh,
this article was kind of like outlining like everything that can go wrong. And I was reading, and it's actually pretty scary when we think about the very important movement to build a more diverse and equitable and inclusive economy. And then you look at some of the biases that come with this technology and how they immediately discount thousands of people. It's concerning with AI. It is interesting to see how the conversation has changed. From I don't remember, was it 2022 or 2023? Now I'm a little bit lost, but when ChatGPT was launched, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, like ChatGPT can write a poem, and it's actually a good one," and then all this idea of the potential and how we can improve productivity, and then also the fears of how many people are going to lose their jobs because of this. And the other side of the argument of no, like it's going to liberate people from the boring stuff, and you need to learn AI because it's going to enhance. So there's like so many things. It's actually scary to see the pace at which this is moving. I think lots of us, myself included, are fearful, but at the same time, I think many of us understand that AI is here to stay, so we might as well lose the fear and start learning. But I think that's the first step to demystify and just like start learning. Sorry.
Demystify, but also learn, I think we need to give some real thought into how we want to use this tool and recognize that it's a tool, right? I'm horrified that people would interview using AI because interviewing is the most human, one of the most human things we do in our work, right? You get to know another person and you see if they will fit within your community. And I don't mean fit in that we're all the same, but will they complement your community? That is a human skill, or should be a human skill.
It should be. It's this article said, like this, and then the kind of like the interviewing hiring process is becoming like so long, and this like AI asking the candidates to record a video, 90 seconds, and the pressure that puts on people, and then you don't really know what is it they're looking for. If they tell you no, thank you, why was that? I don't know, like it seems so random and with a lot of potential to be unfair, I would say, and discriminatory that yeah,
Or
it's
even the video, right? Not everybody has access to the same technology.
yeah, yeah. But I think we need to get on with that. Actually, some countries are ahead of us, like Brazil, like India. They are teaching kids at a very early age how to use this tool, this new technology. And when we think about the workforce of the future, and for me, it's interesting. Like when we talk about the future of work and future proofing our workforce, the future is today. Like I think we need to start acting today. But we see that countries, as I said, like India and Brazil, are way ahead of us. I think here in Canada, what I see is still a lot of fear. I remember, I'm not sure if you remember, but when the kind of like self-checkouts first came up and people were furious, they were boycotting. But now, they are there. And it is a huge concern because, yes, some jobs will just stop existing. And then the people that depend on those jobs, where are they gonna go? And we talk about the upskilling and reskilling. We talk a lot about that in our workforce strategies committee. But I see lots of initiatives, but I still see that the economy, we have important skills gaps. As we have been saying, employers struggling to find the people. But then the other side of it is to do a better job of incentivizing, particularly small and medium-sized employers, to invest in this technology.
And we should be thinking about, it frightens me that we're asking AI to write a poem and do the things that are valuable, or even the self-check. I happen to hate self-checkouts. And one of the reasons is is that we don't have enough interaction with our fellow human beings in modern Canadian society. And you're taking out, particularly post-pandemic, people lost the art of conversation and just those social connections we used to get in third spaces. And there aren't many, but a retail shop and a retail employee, not only is it a good entry-level job, it's another human being in your community you can get to know and add the value of life.
Yeah, and what you're saying, I'm just thinking as you're speaking about our youth, and they are our future, really. And youth unemployment is very high right now in Canada and in many other countries in the world, and it is concerning. And some of those skills that actually employers value the most are those ones that you are mentioning, communication and, like teamwork, the remote work and, attending classes remotely, all of that. There's lots of good things that have come up with it, but there are some negatives. And like, for example, now working from home, young employees losing, that access. And it's very important to know how to interact in the office, how to learn from more experienced people in the office. So it's kind of scary to think that the things that perhaps we need the most, our young people are really not having the best opportunity to learn those skills.
You're 100% correct. And that's actually, I think, some great advice we can leave listeners with is, or viewers with, is if you're given a chance to go into the office and it's optional, take it, because those relationships are so important. Thank you so much, Diana. I always enjoy our chats, and I really appreciate you joining us and sharing your views on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Successfully Ambiguous. Be sure to leave your comments below or find me on LinkedIn and ask your career questions. Like or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And join us for the next episode so that when opportunity knocks, you'll be ready to answer.